nobody really gets taught nutrition. What is this polyunsaturated fat, RDA percentages, and what does this all mean? Yeah, I think sugar is probably the most controversial ingredient. So we want to make sure that any protein powder is giving you all of the essential amino acids.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Also extending a very warm welcome to Arjun, who is the founder of Unbox Health. Welcome, Arjun. Very nice to have you here today with us.
Thanks for the introduction, Spurti. So Unbox Health is basically India's first ratings platform for packaged foods and health supplements. We essentially lab test products and rate them based on label accuracy, toxicity limits, nutritional guidelines. So helping create more clarity in the ecosystem. I also come from a technology and e-commerce background. I would go on Amazon and Flipkart and all of these other platforms, search for products. There's really no way to tell what is a high quality product from what's not, right? So I started working with food labs to essentially understand what was really inside these products, right? And what we found was very concerning. Top ranked protein powders failed basic label accuracy tests. And the only way to really tell good products from bad products is to put these products through an intense lab testing process. And so that's what we ended up doing and our ratings are based on broadly three criteria, right? So label accuracy, which means does the label actually match what's inside the product? Non-toxicity, which means does it contain commonly found toxins in the category that we're talking about? And lastly, a nutritional profile, which is relative to nutritional guidelines that exist. How does this product stack up, right? And so for those of you who have not heard about us, I highly encourage you to check out unboxhealth.in. That's our website.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us all the context and the why and the what behind Unbox. And with people getting more and more conscious about health, it's not just on the high level, but it's important to know what exactly are you putting into your body. And sometimes these labels can be quite confusing or difficult to interpret, if I might say. And I think Unbox is simplifying that for people. So I think that's really, really interesting. But on that note, why do you think generally people overlook food labels? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I'm not sure if people necessarily overlook food labels, but it's probably, I think there's a larger issue of nutritional literacy in our country, and maybe this is true for, I guess, sort of a global problem, but nobody really gets taught nutrition. What is this polyunsaturated fats and like what is this RDA percentages and what does this all mean? I just read the front of the packaging, and if it says no palm oil, I just consume it. Like we're looking for shortcuts, right? And in some ways, what we're trying to do is for Unbox Health also to be a shortcut where we simplify all of that into much easier, more actionable ratings. I mean, we'd much rather people understand how to read food labels and make a lot of their choices also themselves. But in a world where we have some of these nutritional literacy issues, reading food labels feels like a lot of work for some people, right? And so, yeah, I think, yeah, very much something that we as a community and as an ecosystem have to solve together. But I think that it comes down to just this not being taught at a very young age.
So according to you, can you tell us a little more about how labels or reading labels, in fact, can help you make healthier choices? How can you interpret that and ensure you're eating healthy or consuming foods that are healthy for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what most people struggle to do when it comes to nutrition is think in terms of uh, budgets and goals, right? If you think about every nutrient that your body needs or needs to be consumed, you typically have certain levels. If it's a beneficial nutrient, maybe certain levels that you need to meet in order, for instance, I mean, protein intake is the most common one that everybody talks about, right? But um, you typically need to hit a certain level every day for you to get the optimal benefits. Or if it's other nutrients where you maybe need to be mindful of not exceeding those limits, you need to be again conscious of. So just thinking in terms of budgets and goals is, I think, something that a lot of people struggle with, and that's where I think nutritional labels really help. Knowing how to read a food label and understanding how much saturated fat I'm getting from a particular food product will help me then understand where I am in terms of my daily goals. In the absence of knowing how to read food labels, it becomes really hard for you to, because you often just end up guessing.
But can you tell us a little more about micronutrients as well?
A lot of micronutrients that play a very key role, right? If we look at the Indian context specifically, there's like a handful of nutrients that I think everyone, we have a huge deficiency issue, right? Vitamin B12 being one that comes top of mind. Vitamin D is another one that's commonly talked about. Same thing with magnesium is another popular one. Internally, there's a lot of dependencies on these micronutrients that maybe you're not getting, right? So, yeah, everybody talks about protein, and that's the big fad right now, and rightly so. But it's important to be mindful of how much your body really needs when it comes to some of these micronutrients, right?
One thing to look out for rather is your additives that you have. What do you have to say about that? Also, how would you differentiate between what's real and what are additives or anything over and above what is required?
One of the unfortunate things that happens in the food industry is that all of these products get lumped into one category of additives. Something called an ADI that's been defined, right? Which is essentially your daily limit that you need to be conscious of when it comes to some of these additives, right? And these are based on extensive studies that have been done. That when it comes to ingredient lists, a lot of people don't know this, but all ingredients are listed in decreasing order of quantity. And you typically want to look at the first maybe 3 to 5 ingredients in a product, and that tells you the bulk of what's inside it. Ultimately, it's up to you to rely on your own knowledge, use resources like Unbox Health, which do extensive lab testing to then make an informed decision.
Uh, so read as far as reading label goes, once a person is familiar, understood the importance of reading labels or understood how to go about it. Now, what would you say? How much of it would be important, or how much can it contribute towards one's health or fitness goals? And how can they effectively use this information to make smaller changes and sustainable changes so that it ensures that you're making healthier choices and better decisions towards your goals?
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to having frameworks in your head to make better decisions. I talked about budgets and RDAs before this, right? And I think RDAs are essentially recommended dietary allowances. And so every nutrient is a set dietary allowance that ICMR has come up with, which is based on a lot of research, a lot goes into this. So understanding what that means and what consume a particular product does and how much of your budget gets consumed based on a specific product, I think is really reading nutrition labels can really help with that, because once you equip people with the ability to make sense of these things, you can then mirror it to your individual health goals. Yeah, you can make sure you're making better choices in terms of the decisions you want to make.
On the note of ingredients, let's talk about one of the ingredients that gets sort of villainized, if not anything else: sugar. What is your take on sugar? There's so much confusion. What sugar is? How do you differentiate between added sugars, natural sugars? Is it okay? Is it good for you? Bad for you? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think sugar is probably the most controversial ingredient today in the food space, as you said. I think a lot of the hype around sugar is going to kill you needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. I, there are clear guidelines around how much sugar the average adult should be consuming. I think also the artificial versus natural debate sometimes comes up, as you also pointed to. Um, I think there's maybe been a slight exaggeration in terms of the great benefits of honey and date sugar relative to, say, your average run-of-the-mill table sugar. There are some micronutrients in these products like honey and date sugar that maybe help you with some other health benefits, but largely it's still just carbohydrates, right?
Often balance can be the simplest answer for most things, in fact. How can you make simple, smarter choices that can eventually compound to good decision and healthy, better health?
We don't expect everybody to have nutritionist level understanding of food. but we want people to have simple ways and hacks. But I think there's some very simple things you can do, right? And if a product has 10 plus ingredients for a relatively simple product, let's say like a protein powder that has 15 ingredients, that should set off some alarm bells in your head. I think the other thing I would say here is look for, look at the 3 to 5 ingredients at the top of the ingredient list. Avoid too many INS codes, E codes. You're in the market for a particular category. Let's say you're looking for breakfast cereal, right? And you don't want to go through the hassle of reading ingredient lists, reading all of that. A simple way for you would be to just maybe go on Unbox Health, check ratings, dive into, if you want to go into the lab reports and understand why a particular product was rated a certain way, you can obviously do that. But yeah, I think ultimately trying to simplify this decision-making process for everyday consumers like you.
Tell us a little more in detail about how Unbox Health decodes food labels and how it simplifies it for people. And of course, you briefly touched upon the rating system, but what that's categorized upon as well for all of us.
Yeah. If we take a protein powder, for instance, right, which is one of our popular categories on our platform, we would do an extensive panel of testing, which then helps us determine from a label accuracy perspective if the label actually matches what it claims. We check for commonly found toxins like aflatoxins, heavy metals, commonly found things in a protein powder to make sure that it's within safe limits or completely absent, right? And then lastly, we would do a nutritional profile score, which is essentially we look at all of the amino acids, which is a fancy word for proteins, that is in a particular protein powder, and we will compare that to what the guidelines say you should be consuming, right? And even within amino acids, there are different types of amino acids. And so there are some that are essential, there are some that are non-essential. So we want to make sure that any protein powder is giving you all of the essential amino acids. And so we'll check for each of those 9 essential amino acids. We'll look at what quantity of those is found in a product, and then we compare that to what your body needs, right? And then we turn that into a very simple nutritional profile.
I have one final question for you. So, provided that many of the products already have the FSSAI certification, what role does Unbox Health play here? How does it add value further here? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and actually one of the biggest myths that exist in our industry today. What a lot of people have probably seen the FSSAI logo on the back of product packaging. I think even this bottle has an FSSAI logo on it. So the FSSAI essentially is the regulatory body that sets the standards in the industry and also provides licenses for brands to then sell a particular product, right? What a lot of people see when they see this logo is that it's somehow a certification of quality, which is a very different conversation, right? It's the equivalent of saying that just because you have a PAN number or an Aadhaar card, that means you have a good credit score, right? Which is very different in this case. And so what this is essentially a license to operate and a license to sell the product. It does not mean that the product meets quality standards. And so what we are doing is we're relying on FSSAI standards that already exist. So a lot of our ratings are based on existing standards and guidelines. So we're doing the same thing in the packaged food space. So very common misconception in the industry. If you see this FSSAI logo, it does not mean that the product has been certified for quality. And that's why you want to rely on platforms like Unbox Health or others to know that the product actually meets quality standards.
That's very nice, and really appreciate that everything that Unbox Health is doing to simplify food labels, because it's not that simple. It's been a great session.
And thank you all for your insightful and interesting questions. I wish you all the best in your consumption journey. I hope you make better, healthier choices and have more rewarding nutritional experiences.
Thank you for coming once again. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you.